مساء الخير يا أولاد. Today we're going to start chapter 8, and chapter 8 is about audit planning and analytical procedure. Actually, in chapter 6 and 7, we discussed the responsibilities of management and auditor, and in chapter 7, we discussed the audit evidence. And now we are moving to the audit planning and analytical procedure, how to plan for an audit. How to plan for an audit. Type. Actually, we have to understand first what do you mean by auditing. Planning. Planning is the first generally accepted auditing standard of the field work. If you remember in the gas standards, we used to have 3 types or 3 groups of standards. We have general, field work, and reporting. In the planning was required as a first generally accepted auditing standard within the second group, which is the field work, that require the auditor to have adequate planning. And this is the wording of the standard, saying the auditor must adequately plan the work and must properly supervise any assistant. Of course, adequately plan, which means, as we said before, whenever we go to the company, we have to have a plan, and this plan must include part of the audit program. Audit program, which means we have to know what is the main purpose of the audit. We have to find out the qualifications needed. We have to find out what are the main audit procedures to be exercised. We have to know what are the sample size. What is the sample size that are going to be selected, how this sample will be collected, and at the end the timing of doing the audit procedure. So planning is very important because it's telling me what should I do inside the company. What should I do inside the company? We have 4 main reasons for planning. First of all is to help auditors consider factors that in their professional judgment help. To help auditors consider the factors that in their professional judgment help them select accounts and the transaction needing most of the attention. Yani planning will trying to help the auditor take into consideration, okay, what are the most accounts that are in need for more attention. More attention. Yani for example, we said that some transaction accounts are in need for more attention by the auditor than the others. For example, I said cash, inventory, account receivable, all of those are accounts that are more susceptible to risk, which means they are subject more for misstatement. So whenever I have a plan, our planning for the audit, I have to decide which account should I focus on. Right. Second is to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence for circumstances. Well, I think we define what do we mean by sufficient, what do we mean by appropriate evidence in the previous chapter. In order to help keep the audit cost reasonable, you have to decide what are the main audit procedures to be done, how many staff are you need for to do the audit. Third, to avoid the misunderstanding with the client. To avoid the misunderstanding with the client, because the planning we will set whatever the requirement of the auditor from the management and what the management are expecting from the auditor. The 4 main reasons for planning: help auditor to select the account transaction in need for most attention, sufficient and appropriate evidence to be collected, to try to keep the audit cost as reasonable as we can, to avoid misunderstanding with the client by stating what is the main purpose of the audit, what is expected from the auditor, and what are the main help that will be provided by the management. Right. We have here some risk terms that we have to be familiar with in order to complete the chapter. The first term is the acceptable audit risk. Acceptable audit risk. What do you mean by acceptable audit risk? Acceptable audit risk means a measure of how willing the auditor is to accept that the financial statement may be materially misstated after the audit is completed and an unqualified opinion has been issued. Again, here we are talking about the acceptable audit risk. Acceptable audit risk that the auditor completed the audit as it should be done, and they followed the standards. They made the audit by book, but actually at the end still there is a risk that the financial statement may be misstated, and that misstatement have not been discovered or detected by the auditor. And actually this is there because we are using sample. We are using sample. We are doing a sample-based test. So actually the acceptable audit risk cannot be avoided at all, but actually we can decrease it. So whenever the auditor decides on a lower acceptable audit risk, it means that the auditor wants to be more certain that the financial statements are not materially misstated. Not materially misstated. When the auditor decides on lower acceptable audit risk, it means the auditor wants to be more certain that the financial statements are not materially misstated. يعني whenever I will lower that risk, this means that I would like to make or to collect more evidence, to do more audit procedures, to go into depth, because I would like to decrease the risk. Okay, this is why zero risk is certainty, and this is, as we said, impossible, and 100% risk is complete uncertainty, which means in حضرتك you didn't do anything. يعني for example, if we are talking about the acceptable audit risk, if I said that the acceptable audit risk is to accept مثلا misstatement up to $1 million, يبقى actually I can do an audit, collection of evidence, and whatever I will find as misstatement, I will add it up until I reach 1 million. Anything that below 1 million will be considered immaterial. This is tolerable misstatement, as we are going to explain later. Okay, so actually here the acceptable audit risk is a percentage to be set by the auditor in order to find out the level of investigation, the size of the sample that will be collected, the types of the audit procedures that will be done, and so on. Okay, very good. Let's go for the second term, which is the inherent risk. Inherent risk. What is inherent risk? Inherent risk is a measure of the auditor's assessment of the likelihood that there are material misstatements in the account balance before considering the effectiveness of the internal control. يعني here I mean that the internal control will not be considered when we are talking about the inherent risk. يبقى inherent risk is risk to be assessed before assessing the internal or take into consideration the internal control effectiveness. For example, the auditor concludes that there is a high likelihood of material misstatement in an account such as account receivable. The auditor concludes that inherent risk for account receivable is high without considering the effectiveness of internal control. After considering the internal control, I may decrease the level of risk for the inherent account. Type. Assessing the acceptable audit risk and the inherent risk is an important part of the audit plan, because actually it will help determine, as we said, the amount of evidence يعني when I will decide on the acceptable audit risk and the inherent risk, this will tell me, okay, how evidence, how much, what is the size of the evidence that I should collect, and what are the staff needed for that engagement. يعني for example, if the inherent risk for inventory is high because of complex valuation issue, more evidence will be accumulated in the audit of the inventory, and the more experienced staff will be assigned to perform testing in that area. Okay, let's test your understanding. A measure of how willing the auditor is to accept that the financial statement may be materially misstated after the audit is completed and the unqualified opinion has been issued is. Let's go for planning an audit and designing an audit approach. Those are the steps. Actually, the steps for doing the plan, this part is to be discussed in chapter 8, and those steps will be discussed in chapter 9. Okay, so actually chapter 8 and 9 both are talking about the audit plan. Type. Let's first start by the steps to be discussed in chapter 8, which is accept the client and perform initial audit plan. Okay, in order to start the plan, we have to decide first whether to accept or to reject the client. Type. On what basis shall we do that? We shall do that based on something we call the initial audit plan. The initial audit plan. Type. Initial audit plan involve 4 issues, all of which should be done early in the audit. The first is the auditor decide whether to accept a new client or to continue serving an existing client. يعني whether it is a new client at all أو إن حضرتك you are going to continue auditing the same client واخد بالك that you did an audit for it واخد بالك for the previous year. طيب الديسيجن هنا okay based on the experience of the auditor about the existing client, or the auditor should collect enough information in order to decide whether to accept or to reject a new client. يبقى first decision to be done in the initial auditing is to accept أو reject طبعا, or to continue an existing. Okay, يبقى client acceptance and continuous. CPA firm use care in deciding which clients are acceptable. The firm's legal and professional responsibility are such that clients who lack integrity or argue constantly about proper conduct of the audit and fees can cause more problem than they are worth. يعني the clients اللي already you are aware of and actually a problem happened واخد بال حضرتك between you and that management, whether بقى you are client that is arguing مثلا about the type of the audit report to be issued, about the fees to be paid, about the accounting treatment of a specific transaction, about legal issues he would like to مثلا hide from the auditor. All of this will affect the decision of the auditor whether to accept or to decline the request of a new client to be audited by the firm. And now CPA firm may refuse any clients in certain high-risk industries, okay, in order to avoid the risk at all. يعني some industries are more risky than others. Some of the CPA firms are now prefer to avoid any clients in that risky industries. This is why some of the small CPA firm may not accept any publicly held client because of the risk of litigation. Risk of litigation اللي هو legal liability of the audit. يعني what about the acceptance of new client? قال لك before accepting a new client, most CPA firm investigate the company to determine its acceptability. يعني if you have a new auditee or new client that is approaching you for an audit, you have to investigate that client. طيب how to do that? قال لك they do this by examining the extent possible and the prospective client standing in the business community. يعني I can ask the other business companies that I'm doing audit for them. Okay, I have to check on the financial stability of the company, because actually maybe the company have a going concern issue, which means they are facing problems and they are approaching that audit in order to gain some trust in the market, okay, trying to deceive the investors or the creditors. And I have to be aware of such things. Many of these businesses fail financially and expose CPA firm to significant potential liability, as we just said. Or you can ask the previous CPA firm, but in real life we cannot do that, because the CPA firm will never ever reply to you saying that this client was a good client. Type. The purpose of requirement is to help the successor auditor evaluate whether to accept the engagement. The communication may, for example, inform successor auditor that the client lack integrity or that there have been disputes over accounting principle, audit procedures, or fees. Actually, if you are talking here about a new client, you have to investigate by all of these ways in order to decide whether to accept it or not. So actually, we did the initial audit plan. We accept and perform initial audit plan. Okay, very good. When we are doing the initial audit plan, we have to develop an overall audit strategy. After understanding the client's reason for the audit, the auditor should develop a preliminary audit strategy. And this strategy considers the nature of the client, including area where there is a great risk of significant misstatement. We have to be aware of the area that are subject for misstatement than others. And the auditor, based on that, must select staff for the engagement, okay, and in the same time to evaluate the need for outside specialists. And I think we said that before. If I'm going to go and do an audit for a jewelry company, actually I have to have the staff that have the appropriate technical experience or the background to deal with a company in that industry. Second, if I'm not able to do the audit by myself, I have to have an outside specialist to help me, okay, in order to do that. Okay, the second step, actually we finished the first one, which is we have accepted or rejected the client, performed the initial audit plan. Okay, second is to understand the client's business and industry. To understand the client's business and industry. Okay, how to do that? We are saying that there are factors that have increased the importance of understanding the client business and industry, which means before I go to the industry, I have to make sure that there is no decline in the economic condition. Because actually maybe I will have specific economic conditions that is out of the control of the management that causes a losses for the company for the previous year financial statements. So before I go and find out that the company is making losses and actually that the company, okay, is or the management is responsible for that, I have to review the economic conditions surrounding the business. This is very important. This is very important. Also, I have to understand the information technology that connect the client company with major customers and suppliers. What are the softwares to be used by the client dealing with their clients and the suppliers, and keeping records, because actually this is the way of keeping records. So this is the way that I'm going to check in order to make sure in all the transactions have been included in the books. The global operation. Client have expanded the operation globally. If the company having a global operation, actually I have to know what is the operation to be done internationally, what are the different currencies the company is dealing with, who are the main clients or customers that we are dealing in order to investigate the reality or the rightness of the transaction to be done by those clients and businesses. Okay, طيب. In order to understand the client's business and industry, we have to have, as we said, understand the industry and external environment, the main business operation, the management and governance, objective and strategy, and the measurement and performance. Actually, all of this is under step number 2, which is understand the client business. To understand the client businesses. Type. The first is industry and external environment. Reason for obtaining an understanding of the client's industry and external environment are the risk associated with a specific industry. And as I said before, if we are dealing with saving and loan industries, this is an industry that include a high level of risk, because maybe the institution or the person that you are lending money will not be able to repay for the company. So actually, this is a risk that I have to be aware of. If I'm dealing with international companies and these companies are paying me in foreign currency, we are subject to another type of risk, which is the foreign currency rate fluctuation, the fluctuation in the currency. Right. Second one, inherent risk common to all clients in certain industry, like مثلا in the food industry, the potential inventory obsolescence. This is one inherent risk, okay, that is exist in all of the food industry. To find the product expired, and this will lead to a decrease in the inventory available and increasing the cost, because this will be considered as a losses to the company. Type. A unique accounting requirements. For example, if you are dealing with one of the specialized entity like the construction, railroad, not for profit organization. I think we discussed something like that in the governmental accounting. We need for a special accounting to deal with governmental accounting. We need for a special accounting to deal with the construction companies, with banks, and so on. This is the first understanding industry and environment of the business. I have to understand the main business operation. What are the major source of revenue, the main operation of the business, the key customers, from where are you financing your operation, through loan, through debt, and information about the related parties. Who are the related parties?